Hi everyone, my name is Jlassia. I'm an entrepreneur, a university professor, and a boxing coach. I've coached several champions, and during these years, I've been interested in something that affects us in everyday life: emotions. As a coach, it's important for me to understand the emotional state of athletes to help them perform. Is there any fear, pressure before a fight? Absolutely. In my experience, when there's none, it's really a good sign. Let me tell you about Kevin. I'll never forget his first fight. He was sitting in a corner of the locker room looking terrified. So I went to check on him. He shocked me by admitting, "Sam, I'm a coward." Then he opened up about how scared he was to step into the ring. It was the first time an athlete was so honest with me about his emotional state. I talked to him until I saw that glint in his eyes, the so-called, the eye of the tiger. That's when I knew he was ready. And right just before the fight, someone from the club came by and dropped a bombshell. "Hey Kevin, your opponent had just been released from jail." At that moment, I saw Kevin fall apart completely. And when he got to the ring, he was badly beaten. No need to get into the ring to understand the impact of your limiting beliefs have on what you can do. Emotions are all around us, inside us, at work, at home. Many of us heard someone close to us, a manager, a spouse, a friend, say something like, "Hey Sam, you need to manage your emotion better." Yet, if you think about it, have you ever been taught how to do it? As a coach, it's important for me to understand the emotional state of athletes to support them. As a university professor, I have to understand my students to help them in their project. As a manager, I have to understand my teams to help them improve. All those experiences drove me to ask myself how our emotional state impact our ability to perform. At the end of the day, I came back with 4 main pillars that are shared by anyone who wants to perform. The first one is motivation. Motivation is why you do what you do. What's in it for you? Why are you facing this situation? The deeper your why is connected to something inside you, the more you can push yourself and do better. Few years ago, I was overwhelmed running project after project and preparing for a leadership conference. I was just few days before this conference and I was so exhausted that I confided in my right-hand man. "I can't do this anymore. I'm too tired. I will cancel the conference." Just 2 hours after I said that, I received an email from one of the participants that completely changed my perspective. This woman have been through so much. She suffered abuse, sexual assault, and she shared with me how much this conference was exactly what she needed and what does it mean to her. If you were me, would you done this conference? Of course you would have done it. It's obvious, like how women endure pregnancy and all its implications, and how parents stay up all night when their child is sick. It's a deep part of them that help them overcome those situations. So each time that you're facing a situation that seems too hard for you, ask yourself, why am I doing this? The second pillar is focus. Our minds are often noisy, and athletes, artists creates ritual before set up to a performance. We know that setting specific goals increase the chance that we have to achieve them. And if you have a doubt about it, listen to the following example. I have 5 goals in which I will put 20% of my energy. I have 1 goal in which I will focus 100% of my energy. In which of those two situations will I be more effective? That's the point. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, where do I create the most value? And put 100% of your energy in this answer. The third pillar is self-confidence. When it comes to stress, it's all about mindset. If you think that you have what it takes to handle a situation, then stress is positive. But if you feel like you're in over your head, then stress is negative and become a threat. It's a vicious cycle that feeds on itself. You lack confidence, your performance suffer. And when your performance suffer, your confidence take an even bigger hit. And guess what? The opposite is true. The more confidence you have in your skills, the more likely you are to succeed. Whenever you feel like you doubt, like you're now up to it, ask yourself, who's worried that? Who said that you couldn't do this or that? Now you've got it. What you do impact what you feel, and how you feel impact what you do. This brings us to the fourth pillar, emotional control. Think of a failure, a painful situation. In most cases, the major cause is stress. This means that unconsciously we associated stress to a very negative feeling, and this thought follow this pattern. I experienced a major failure. I was very stressed that day. I experienced a major failure. I performed poorly. So when I stress, I perform poorly. In other words, if you change the way that you look at a situation, you may change the outcome of this situation. I used to believe that emotional controls means not feeling anything. And I was wrong, because denying my emotion wasn't helpful at all. When I realized it, I start talking to myself. Don't worry if you spend your time talking to yourself. Everybody does it. Nobody talks about it. You're not alone. So I ask myself, what is stressing me out? Most of the time, it's the issue, the outcome. Worst case scenario, what will happen? Most of the time, the answer to this question is ridiculous. What are the probability that this worst case scenario happens? Very low. And the last question, where do I want to put my focus? What do I want to focus my energy on? A part of me, maybe 50% of me, hopes to succeed, and the other 50% is afraid of failure. It's true to say that you can fail. When I was younger, I failed an interview to get in a very prestigious school. I was so nervous that I felt like I said all the wrong things. As you may imagine, I was not accepted in the school, and I was so disappointed. This day, I've sworn to myself that stress will push me forward instead. I went to another school where I met an amazing guy who is now my business partner. My degree director is now one of my clients, and the best part, I am now a teacher in the same school that turned me down as a student. This is a great example that a failure today can lead to a great opportunity in the future. And what is the difference between the failure and the opportunity? It lies in your mindset. By focusing on what's ahead, you're projecting yourself beyond the present circumstances. Now, let's go back to Kevin, the boxer I told you about earlier. As I told you, he had a very tough first round in which he was badly beaten. I was thinking and I remembered that before boxing, Kevin had a strong experience as a dancer. So I decided to take a bet, not talk to him as a boxer, but talk to him as a dancer, which means that I was giving him choreography-like instruction to exploit a weakness that I found in his opponent defense. Why? Because I know that when you are in the high pressure zone, you're automatically connecting to something deep inside you. The second round lasts 30 seconds. Kevin won this fight with a spectacular knockout. And when he looked at me, I saw one question in his eyes. Am I really capable of doing this? Oh yes, you are. Few years later, Kevin became the French champion. Not too bad for a coward. How he did this? By believing in himself and turning his deepest fear into his strongest motivator. This teaches that it's important to know your strength and think outside the box to solve problems. Now you know that performance is based on 4 pillars and that emotions, no matter how intense it is a sign that your body works perfectly. The first pillar was motivation. The best way to know your deepest motivation is to ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? The second pillar was concentration. The best way to know what to focus on is to ask yourself, where do I create the most value? And put 100% of your energy in it. The third pillar was self-confidence. Each time that you think that you're not able to do something, ask yourself, whose rule is that? The fourth pillar is emotional control. Each time that the stress raises too high, ask yourself, where do I want to put my focus on? You now know that if you ask yourself the right question, you will get the right answers. You will often face uncertainty, push your limit, be daring, and guess what? You have to keep something in mind. This is part of the process. Remember that you are your own limit and your best resource. Remember that you are your worst enemy and your best ally. And remember that you are the one who can change your reality. Each time that you feel like you're not up to it, that it's too hard, that you're not able to do this, ask yourself a question. Whose rule is that? Thank you for your attention.